Good evening, darlings and deviants. My name is Lucy, and I'm just a little loony. And today I'm going to spoil the entire set of March of the Machine for you. Don't worry, I was there on the front lines. Well, front lines being I stayed at my circus and didn't really do anything. I just kind of watched with popcorn. It was entertaining. But there were so many cool things to see. So many battles, so many epic creatures, so much passion, love on the battlefield. It was lovely. So, let's get ready to look into every card in the... Hold on, I gotta take this. Yeah? What do you mean? I can't show them the whole thing? Well, why not? Oh, well, okay. So, that was my PR department, and they recommend that I don't share the whole thing, because we could get sued by Wizards of the Coast. So, let's just go over this, corporate mandated slideshow that, really? They gave me a slideshow? That was it? Oh, well. Let's get right on into it. It's showtime! Alright, so this should be all that I have to show you guys at the moment. Right now we're going to start off with Alabaster Host Sanctifier, 1 and a white, for a 2-2 with lifelink Phyrexian Cleric. This is fine. Like, this is probably going to be draft filler at the most, but, you know, having 2-2s for 2 with lifelink, they've given at least, like, they've given us a lot of these in recent years. I love her getup. It's really nice. Well, nice if you're a Phyrexian, which she is, so it's fine. Moment of Truth. This was one of the cards we saw right when the set came out. It's 1 and a blue for an instant. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of those cards into your hand, 1 into the graveyard, and 1 in the bottom of your library. This is one of those things where it's like, it's one of those filler cards. It's just a draw spell. However, it does put 1 into the graveyard, and that can set up some synergies. I don't think there's any in the set so far, besides some of the big splashy rares and mythics. There's not really a reanimation theme or anything, but some card draws, some card selection. It's pretty nice here. What's that? Ah! Okay, we can cut those. Next up is Negate, 1 and a blue, for an instant counter target non-creature spell, showing a Johnny becoming unphyrexianized. It's really cool. I don't really like to play a lot of these in limited, and sometimes this shows up in standard depending on how many non-creature spells are in decks in standard. I'm not really super into standard at the moment, so I can't really tell. It's a decent sideboard card. And that's about it. It's nothing really special here. We are just in the commons after all. Traumatic Revelation. For 1 and a black, we have a sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a creature or battle card from it. If you do, that player discards that card. If you don't, incubate 3. So incubate is a new mechanic that the Phyrexians have. You could create an incubator token with 3+1/+1 counters on it and 2 generic mana to transform this artifact. It transforms into a 0/0 Phyrexian artifact creature token. So, that means this is a 2-sided token, which is the first time this has ever been done. It's really cool. And more importantly, that incubator, it's not a creature. So if your opponent has a creature board wipe that doesn't hit artifacts, these cards stick around. I think this card will see play in limited because it's a 2 mana 3/3 on layaway. Like you spend 2 mana now and you get the incubator, and then later on you get the 3/3 for 2 more mana. So it's a 4 mana 3/3 if you don't make them discard a card. And if you see their big scary creature or battle, you can make them discard that and not have to deal with it. Mirrodin Avenged. It's 1 black for an instant. Destroy target creature that was dealt damage this turn and draw a card. This is You Are Already Dead from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, and it will be just as good here as it was there. There's not really a lot of pingers, not really a lot of shenanigans in this set. But drawing a card is nice, and sometimes you just need that sort of removal. Deadly Derision. 2 black black for an instant. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Create a treasure token. This is really cool because you need removal sometimes. That's just how it is in Limited. And making a treasure token makes this only cost technically 3 mana. And it helps you fix your mana. So if you're stuck on black and need your second color in Limited, you can drop this. Definitely a pick and sealed because it'll let you ramp out your big dumb spells. I think this would be a pretty solid Limited card. The Beamtown Beatstick. I love the name of this thing. It's so great. 1 red for an artifact equipment. The equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has menace. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player or a battle, create a treasure token. Just like what I was saying with Deadly Derision, Beamtown Beatstick has... It's basically the proactive version of that. You're basically, when you're dealing damage, you're ramping out your big stuff, and that just kind of cascades the value in your favor. For an equip cost of only 2, this isn't that bad. Now, you do have to, back it up with creatures, but if you go 1 drop, 2 drop, and then on 3 this thing and equip it, you'll be able to play like a 5 drop next turn. That seems pretty nice. Norn's Inquisitor. Here's an explanation of my Incubate again. And here's the uncommons. For 1 and a white, you get a 1/1. And when it enters the battlefield, you incubate 2. So this one gets 2 +1/+1 counters, and you can flip it into a 2/2. And a very important thing here is this makes all of your incubations better, because whenever a permanent you control transforms into a Phyrexian, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So I think this would be a pretty solid incubate enabler. Worst case scenario, you just get a 3/3 if this thing sticks around. And best case scenario, it makes all of your little eggs flip into better things. Elspeth's Smite. For 1 white mana, you get an instant. Elspeth's Smite deals 3 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. An excellent removal spell in white for Limited. I don't think it'll outclass anything that we have in constructed formats, but it depicts a really cool moment in the story, and exiling it might be relevant in this format. There's a little bit of reanimation in uncommon and rare, I believe, so being able to exile it is pretty convenient. Seal from Existence. 1 white for an enchantment that has Ward 3. So, reminder on Ward, whenever this enchantment becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter it unless that player pays 3. So, whenever it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Seal from Existence leaves the battlefield. It's a good old-fashioned Oblivion Ring, Journey to Nowhere, that sort of effect that makes it stay away, and this will be better than most and may break out into other decks in other formats because it has 2 white pips, so that helps with devotion, and it's hard to get rid of. Making you pay 3 extra mana is a lot. This may actually be one of these effects that see play in Commander. This might just straight up replace Banishing Light, honestly. That extra white pip isn't too much of a big deal in a lot of these formats, and Ward 3 makes these a lot more impressive. I don't think they replace Oblivion Ring, because Oblivion Ring has some shenanigans you can do with it, and blinking it or sacrificing it on the stack, but I think this one replaces Banishing Light for the most part. Merciless Repurposing. 4 black for an instant. Exile target creature, incubate 3. So you get a creature and you get rid of a creature. It's really good, and it shows up arguably one of the best Praetors in terms of, not being evil. He's not great in that regard. He's still probably a solid 6 on the evil scale, which I don't have handy on me, but he's a solid 6 on there. But, a lot of people on Twitter would call him a 10, so moving on. Phyrexian Gargantua for 4 black. For a 4/4 creature Phyrexian Horror, when it enters the battlefield, you draw 2 cards and you lose 2 life. This is 2 Phyrexian Ravager, I believe. the 2 black and 2/2 that you lose a life and draw a card. This is 2 of those stapled together, and that means it is good. Later in the game, like your curve probably tops out at around 6. You slam a 4/4, you draw 2 cards, you have more resources than your opponent. This is just a solid limited card. Render Inert. 2 and a black for a sorcery. Remove up to 5 counters from target permanent, and then you draw a card. So, we haven't seen any battles yet, but this card works really well with battles because it helps you flip those immediately. And it also gets rid of those pesky counters on those incubation cards. Because keep in mind, the Phyrexians that flip over, those are 0/0s. They can't live if you remove a lot of their counters. So this could be a removal spell, could be a big creature. It's really flexible in this format, and I think that's going to make it good. It doesn't look like much on the surface, but I think it'll do more work than people think it will. Ramosian Greatsword. For 4 and a red, you get an equipment that has equipped creature, gets +3/+1, and has trample and equips for 2. That sounds awful. But it has another ability with Convoke. Your creatures can help cast this spell. Each creature you tap while casting the spell pays for 1 generic or 1 mana of that creature's color. So, if you have 3 tokens, for instance, this only costs 1 and a red. Or 3 mana, and you tap a red creature along the way there. The Convoke cards are really good, and especially reward token strategies. And keep in mind, Incubate does make creature tokens, so they kind of help feed into each other. Scrappy Bruiser. For 3 and a red, you get a creature, Raccoon Warrior. That's a 3/4. When he attacks, up to 1 target attacking creature gets +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. Return that creature to its owner's hand at the end of combat. Return it only if it's on the battlefield. Obviously, you can't do it if it's not there. So, an interesting thing you can do about this is you can either bounce himself. You probably don't want to do that much unless it's killing them. Or you can bounce some utility creatures, such as, the Norn's Incubator, for instance. The giant Phyrexian that draws you 2 cards. There's plenty of ETBs in this set that can really be powerful when returned to your hand. And the trample is nothing to scoff at. Trample makes it so they really don't want to block, because the damage will just come through anyway. Stoke the Flames. I love this card. For 2 red, it's an instant, deals 4 damage to any target with Convoke. This card just kills so many people. I played when it was in Standard a lot, and this card, it's really good. You make some tokens, you spit out 4 damage. Keep in mind, any target also hits battles too, and we'll get into those in a bit. But this card's just good. 4 mana for 4 damage is okay and limited, and if you can cast it for anything less, it's amazing. Sandstalker Moloch. That is hard to say. For 1 green, you get a 4/2 lizard with flash. When it enters the battlefield, if an opponent casts a blue and or black spell this turn, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent card from among them and put it into your hand, and then you put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. People will tell you that this is a sideboard card, and they're probably right in terms of constructed. In terms of limited, you play this and you don't care about that enters the battlefield ability. You just care that it is a 1 green for a 4/2 with flash, and you sometimes get some extra value. In that regard, I think this card's going to be really good. 4 attack trades up, and being able to surprise people with flash is really good. Ravenous Sailback. For 4 and a green, you get a 3/4 dinosaur that when it enters the battlefield, you choose one. It either gains haste until end of turn, or destroys target artifact or enchantment. Once again, the incubation pods, those are artifacts. So if you can blow it up before it hatches, they don't get that cool Phyrexian, and they don't get that. And there's a lot of the battles that flip over into enchantments, so probably best if this guy, he'll probably be doing the destroy target artifact or enchantment more than you think. Though sometimes it's nice to know that he has just the ability to smash on in with fast dinosaur haste whenever you can't have that target for the artifact or enchantment on hand. Tandem Takedown. For 1 green green, you get an instant. Up to 2 target creatures you control each get +1/+0 until end of turn. They each deal damage equal to their power to another target creature, planeswalker, or battle. I love how a lot of these effects are targeting battles because it makes it so that they're not as... You don't have to only attack battles to get rid of them. Well, I'll explain those in a bit. But as it stands, this card's a really solid removal spell. I could see it being first pickable, honestly. 2 double green is a little rough to commit to in draft, but a double fight can kill almost anything, really. And the fact that it also hits planeswalkers, this might be good enough to see play in a tokeny deck in like Pioneer or something. I don't think it can get into Modern. It's a little bit too much mana for this kind of effect. Kami of Whispered Hopes. For 2 and a green, you get a 1/1 spirit that says, if 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a permanent you control, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on that permanent instead. Tap to add X mana of any one color, where X is Kami of Whispered Hope's power. So, the good thing about this one is, at worst, it just taps to add 1 mana. That's fine. And it also increases the +1/+1 counters, specifically on your incubates as well. So if you incubate for 2, you're actually incubating for 3, because it adds another +1/+1 counter to any permanent. It doesn't need to be a creature. And that sort of hardened to scales effect is really cool. Storm the Seed Core. For 2 green green, you get a sorcery, distribute 4 +1/+1 counters among up to 4 target creatures you control. Creatures you control gain vigilance and trample until end of turn. So, at first, I thought this card was... It seems like an okay limited card. Venerated Rot Priest is a real magic card. It's a 1 mana, 1/2 with Toxic 1, and whenever it becomes the target... Well, whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell or ability, an opponent gets a poison counter. This targets 4 of your creatures. If you have 4 creatures, your opponent gets 4 poison counters, plus a whole army crundling at them that has Vigilance and Trample. I think this card is going to see play in like Pioneer. I don't think it could see play in Modern again. 4 mana is a lot if you're not doing some shenanigans in that format. And we'll probably definitely see play in Standard. Streetwise Negotiator. For 1 and a green, you get a 0/2 with backup. Backup 1 is an ability that says, when this creature enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Keep in mind that a counter changes based on the backup number. So if it's backup 2, you put 2 counters, backup 3, you put 3 counters, and so on and so forth. And it also gains the following ability. This will change, like, it sounds really awkward when you first read it, because you're like, it gains the following ability. ... What do you mean? And it means the abilities that the creature just has inherently. So Streetwise Negotiator here will give another creature the ability that this creature assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. When we get into the rares, I'll explain it with a couple cards that make a little bit more sense with it. But this one just says you punch with your booty for now. And keep in mind, this is something that it will be easy to forget and might make you lose some limited games if you're not aware. You can just put the +1/+1 counter on this card. And that means this card is attacking for 3? So it's a 2 mana 3/3? Hold up, this card might actually be insane. I need to look at this a bit more. Further research is required. Next, we have Harried Artisan. We have Harry here. For 2 and a red, we have a 2/3 with haste. That for 3 and a Phyrexian white mana, which means you can either pay it with white mana or 2 life, you can transform it into the Phyrexian Skyflare, which is a 3/4 with flying and haste. So you can either bring it into play as a 2/3 and attack and save it for a bit until you can flip him over and he gets a little bit of a buff, or you can play him for 6 mana and pay 2 life and flip him over, or 7 mana. 7 mana is a little bit too much for something like this, but getting flying for only 3 mana is pretty good. and being a 3/4 is really big. Sunblessed Guardian. For 1 and a white, you get a 2/2 creature human cleric. And that's it, but he can also transform for 5 and a Phyrexian red. Again, Phyrexian red can be paid with either red mana or 2 life. And he flips over to the Furnace Blessed Conqueror. Whenever it attacks, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of it. Put a +1/+1 counter on that token for each +1/+1 counter on the Blessed Conqueror. Sacrifice that token at the beginning of the next instep. So there's probably going to be a +1/+1 counter theme if the Kami was any suggestion. I don't think this puts it does not put a counter on itself, which might make it a little bit weird, but there's probably some +1/+1 counter shenanigans up in here. We don't have well, you guys don't have the full set yet. I know what I saw. Disclaimer, I don't actually know like that. I'll just get it off here. Notfold Hermit is 3 and a green for a 4/4 troll, and that's it. And it also can transform for 5 and a Phyrexian blue into Chrome Host Hulk. Man, these Phyrexian names are hard to pronounce. Whenever Chrome Host Hulk attacks, up to 1 other target creature has base power and toughness 5/5 until end of turn. It can make your puniest 1/1 into a massive threat. I really like this card. It's just kind of good on curve. If you could ramp it out with treasures, which seems to be a thing that can happen in this set, making your other smaller things attack in for 5 is really powerful. Halo Forager. For 1 blue and black, you get a 3/1 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, you may pay X. When you do, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with mana value X from a graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. There's a lot of debate whether this card will be good in older formats, and it really depends. Like, in Modern, you have stuff like Bolt, you have Thoughtseize, some really powerful spells, and it's kind of like a Thoughtcaster, Snapcaster Mage. But you gotta pay mana for it, and it's a little awkward. But it's a 3 mana 3/1 flyer, and that's just kind of good on its own, so jury's still out on this one. I definitely know for sure it'll be a great thing in Limited. Definitely first pick this if there's not like an insane rare. Well, maybe not. 2 colors is a little bit to commit to, but this card's really worth it. It makes a compelling argument for it. Botanical Brawler is a 0/0 for green and a white with trample that enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Told you there were some shenanigans up in here. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on another permanent you control, if it's the first time +1/+1 counters have been put on that permanent this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Botanical Brawler. Also works with Incubate, works with all the other doubling effects. This card's just really good. Can get out of hand very quickly. Joyful Storm Sculptor. 3 blue and a red for a 2/3 that when it enters the battlefield, you make 2 1/1 blue and red elemental creature tokens. Whenever you cast a spell that has Convoke, it deals 1 damage to each opponent in each battle they protect. The each battle they protect clause to this is really good because you can play a lot of your battles, not really focus on attacking them, and then play a couple Convoke spells and flip them over, and then you could cast more Convoke spells. Or maybe your opponent's just dead by that point. I think this card's really good. Solidifies that blue and red is going to be good at convoking things out, which is a neat design space. We don't really see that a lot for them. Blue and red is known for making tokens, but blue not so much. So it's neat to see that space being explored. Next we have Invasion of Dominaria. It's our first battle, and for 2 and a white, you get a Battle Siege. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life and you draw a card. It has 5 health, I suppose, and it flips over into Seraph Faithkeeper, which is a 4/4 flyer with Vigilance. Now, how this works, you'll play the Invasion of Dominaria for 2 and a white, and you'll get the effect to gain 4 life and draw a card. Then you choose an opponent to protect it. Then you can attack this battle just like you would a planeswalker. You can burn it with any target spells like the Stoke the Flames from before. You can attack it with creatures, so on and so forth. And then, once you get rid of all those counters, you flip it over into Seraph Faithkeeper. So like I said, that Render Inert that removes up to 5 counters, well, that gets all the counters away from this, and you get your Seraph Faithkeeper. So when I'm saying that card might be better, it's because of battles. The battle mechanic seems interesting. There is a deliberation between whether these are going to be good in like the higher power level 60 card formats, and we don't quite know yet. This is a new card type. It's going to take some play testing, and we're going to need to see how this shakes out. All I know is I love the design of these. They're sideways, so it invokes the planes from Plane Chase that we'll be looking at in the Commander sets. And I mean, the arts on these are gorgeous. Like, if this is a mainstay in Magic going forward, I would be a-okay with it. These look amazing. I love it. Moving on, we have Invasion of Zendikar for 3 and a green. You get a battle with 3 health, and when it enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. It's a Sky Shroud Claim, double rampant growth, those sort of effects. And those are just kind of always good. I think this may see play in Commander, mostly just because of that ramp. You don't really need the Awakened Skyclave that it flips into, but I mean, it's just extra ramp for you. And the Awakened Skyclave is a 4/4 with Vigilance and Haste, and as long as it's on the battlefield, it's a land in addition to its other types. And you can tap to add 1 mana of any color. So it's just more ramp. And also a 4/4 beater that can just punch people in the face. That's always good. Invasion of Muraganda. For 4 and a green, you get a battle with 6 health. That's a lot. And when it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then that creature fights up to 1 target. Okay, yeah, that explains it. That fights a creature. Then it flips into Primordial Plasm. At the beginning of combat, on your turn, another target creature gets +2/+2 and loses all abilities until end of turn. That's pretty interesting, because that means like you can target a creature with negative abilities and give it more power, but it loses any abilities it may have, so they really don't print things with downside nowadays, so this card may just turn something into a vanilla creature. That'll be interesting to see. The important thing about this is it's a fight spell. It's 5 mana for a fight spell and a little bit of a buff onto it. Like, if you flip it over, great. If you don't, you don't really mind too much. Like, you were just playing it for the fight spell anyway. Invasion of Kaladesh. For blue and a red, we get a battle with 4 health. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, which is really good because it helps you attack the battles. In this battle, flips over into Aetherwing. Golden Scale Flagship is a legendary artifact, and its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control, which will be 2 if you have that Thopter from before. And it has crew 1, so the Thopter can crew it. Excellent. Invasion of Moag. For 2 green and a white, you get a battle with 5 health that when it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. I'm sensing a theme in green-white for this format. Counters, counters, counters. And it flips over into Bloom Wielder Dryads, a 3/3 creature Dryad with Ward 2. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. That's just really good. And enables all of your +1/+1 counter things, makes threats that shouldn't be threats into bigger threats. This is really good. Invasion of Ergamon. For red and a green, you get a 5 health battle that when it enters the battlefield, you create a treasure token, and when you may discard a card, and if you do, you draw a card. Then it flips over into Truga Cliff Charger, a 3/4 with trample that when it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, search your library for a land card or a battle card, reveal it, put it to your hand, then shuffle. A 3/4 with trample helps you get through and finishes more battles, just like the thing wants you to, or if you need more lands, it can get that for you too. I think given this uncommon, red-green might be the archetype for battles. But who knows? We still need to see the whole set. Aha! We're in the rares, and there are some spicy things here. A reminder of what backup does over there. For Boonbringer Valkyrie, for 3 white, you get a 4/4 with an Angel Warrior with backup 1. So you can put a +1/+1 counter on something, and then give it Flying, First Strike, and Lifelink. This card is amazing. Like, this card will definitely see play in Limited, because it's a giant bomby rare. Like, that's kind of insane. But even though it's 5 mana, I could see it seeing play in other formats because you could make a big threat evasive and gain you life. That's kind of great. And it leaves it behind, like it's not like a spell or anything. It leaves behind a 4/4 Flying, First Strike, and Lifelinker. If you're playing a red deck, it's impossible. Like, you can't get through this unless you have Stoke the Flames. Guardian of Girapur. For 2 white, you get a 3/3 flyer that when it enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 other target creature or artifact you control, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. It's like a Restoration Angel. It's a, Restoration Angel, Flicker Wisp, those sort of effects. Blink effects are always good. This is a big 3/3 flyer. Like, this card's really nuts. Like, it gives you extra value, lets you blink stuff. This card's very good. Knight Errant of Eos. For 4 white, you get a 4/4 with Convoke, which means your creatures can help you cast this. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 creature cards with mana value X or less from among them, where X is the number of creatures that convoked Knight Errant of Eos. Put the revealed cards into your hand and then shuffle. This card is very good. It's probably going to draw you 2 cards if you're playing it, because you're probably ramping this out. Like, you're probably making a couple tokens, and then you're ramping this out, and you're going to draw 2 cards, and you're going to play another one. This card's really good. Like, it's kind of gross. Like, the fact that it can get itself if you convoke it for 5, that's kind of nuts. Fairy Mastermind is 1 blue for a 2/1 with flash and flying, and whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card. And for 2 blue, each player draws a card. This is Yuta Takahashi's World Champion card, and it's really good. Like, this card is definitely going to see play in older formats because people draw their second cards a lot. Is your Is it Phoenix opponent drawing cards? Play the Fairy Mastermind and you draw some cards too. Is the, I believe it's a Jeskai Breach deck comboing off and drawing cards? You're drawing cards too. This card is very good and will probably see play in a lot of formats. And if you needed me to say it, just play it in Limited. This card's insane. Transcendent Message is X blue 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 for an instant with Convoke that lets you draw X cards. Convoke makes this really interesting because it lets you, like, yes, you have to tap 5 mana to draw 1 card. Or you could tap 3 creatures and 2 mana to draw a card. Or 6 mana and 3 creatures to draw 5 cards. 9 total quote-unquote mana. This card's very flexible and kind of scales off of how many tokens you have. If you are making blue tokens in your deck, definitely play this. Or if you're if you're playing blue creatures, this card's great because you can tap those blue creatures in order to draw more cards. I really like these kind of effects. I like drawing X cards. Drawing cards makes me feel good. Chrome Host Seed Shark. For 2 blue, you get a 2/4 with flying that whenever you cast a non-creature spell, incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value. Again, we've already gone over what incubate does, and keep in mind, X means it comes into play with that many +1/+1 counters on it. I think this card is going to be the best in the set. There's already a lot of decks in both Modern and Pioneer, and Standard for that matter, that can cast a bunch of different spells in a turn that are non-creature spells. This card is definitely going to see play. Like, I'm not a huge, like, I don't know everything. I am a silly clown girl. Well, not clown necessarily, but yeah, some would debate me. But this card is really good. It doesn't get bolted, it doesn't die to a lot of the premium removal spells, and it makes more creatures and makes more threats. I think this is going to be pretty good. I'm prepared to eat my word on it, though. Grafted Butcher is 1 and a black for a 2/2 that when it enters the battlefield, Phyrexians you control gain menace until end of turn, and other Phyrexians you control gain +1/+1. And 3 and a black, sacrifice an artifact or creature, and it comes back to the battlefield under your control. Only as a sorcery, though. A lord that can come back from the grave. This feels very zombie-ish, and it's nice to finally get a Phyrexian lord. It's kind of weird that the Phyrexian tribal deck is in black-white for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, but I can see it. They used to be mono-black way back in the day, and Elish Norn kind of gave them a little bit of white before Karna beheaded her. So, I like this. This lord's great if you're playing Phyrexians. Play him like that. That's kind of the most I can say. You probably don't first pick him in Limit. Yeah, you probably still do. I think you just pick all the Phyrexians. Because even if the archetype is in black and white in Commander, you can probably splash another color and make an insane 3-color Phyrexian deck in this format. We'll need to wait and see. Archpriest of Shadows is 3 black for a 4/4 human warlock with backup 1. So again, a +1/+1 counter, and they get Death Touch. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. This gives something haste and lets you reanimate something. This card is insane. Snap this up first pick, and it's probably going to be good in Commander too. Just being able to give something a reanimate on hit, and with Death Touch, it makes it really hard for your opponent to make a good choice there. There's not really a good one at all. Hoarding Broodlord is 5 black for a 7/6 dragon with flying and convoke. When it enters the battlefield, you search your library for a card, exile it face down, and then for as long as that remains exiled, you can cast it. And suppose you cast from exile, have convoke. This card's just really solid, like it's a giant flyer that you can ramp out quickly with tokens. This card's real good. You play it. Like, I don't need to say much about it. Might see play in like non-dragon decks in Commander, mostly because being able to tutor up a card for tapping tokens probably seems really good. City on Fire. For 5 red, you get an enchantment with Convoke. And if a source would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage instead. Red's big, dumb enchantment, that's kind of insane. Being able to turn 1 damage into 3 is very good. And this basically means if you get through and hit a battle, most of the time it's flipping over with a minimum investment to it. Or, it just kind of kills people. Both are fine. Into the Fire. For 2 and a red, you get a sorcery. Into the Fire deals 2 damage to each creature, planeswalker, and battle. Or you put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards +1. I don't think this one's first pickable. We don't know how good the 2 damage to everything will actually rat things. There's been a lot of things with 3 toughness and 4 toughness that I've seen so far. But doing 2 to each battle might be really interesting. If you can draft enough battles, and we don't really know enough about that yet. Because battles aren't quite like sagas from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, where you could just take them and expect them to be creatures eventually. You need to put a little bit of effort into the battles, but they flip over into something kind of crazier. So we're not really sure about that yet. I like these modal red cards where they let you wheel, but on your own, and draw that many cards +1 so it replaces itself. You kind of get a reload from Yu-Gi-Oh! But a little bit better because it draws you that 1 extra card. Voldaren Thrill Seeker. For 2 and a red, you get a 1/1 with backup 2. This means it's getting 2+1/+1 counters. And it gets the ability 1. Sacrifice this creature. It deals damage equal to its power to any target. That means battles, that means players, that means creatures, that means planeswalkers. I think this is really good because it can let you turn a really big creature of yours into a 1-mana kill them dead, because they get those 2 counters, and they get the additional, ability of throwing themselves at the opponent's face. That turns this card into a little bit of a weak sauce card, because for 3 mana for a 1/1 that can sack to deal 1 damage, that's not good. But it can also back up itself and turn it into a 3 mana 3/3, which is pretty good on its own. Tribute to the World Tree. For green, 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 you get an enchantment that whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater, otherwise put 2+1/+1 counters on it. This card is very good. There's decks but mostly in Pioneer. Mono Green Devotion is a very good deck at the moment, and it plays a lot of creatures. And this only counts off of entering the battlefield, so it turns all your elves into big actual threats, or it turns your things that, are already threats on their own into more threats in the form of drawing cards. This card's very, very busted, but the 3 green pips kind of restricts it to mono green strategies. Now we're moving on to the team-ups, and our first one here is Hidetsugu and Kairi. For 2 blue, and a black, you get a legendary creature, Ogre Demon Dragon, that is a 5/4 with flying, and that when they enter the battlefield, you draw 3 cards, then you put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. Yep, it brainstorms. And when they die, you exile the top card of your library. Target opponent loses life equal to its mana value. If it's an instant or sorcery card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Would you like to put a giant spell on top of your library, dome your opponent for it, and then cast it and kill them? Me too! I'm glad we think alike. Also, it's a 5/4 flyer that will just kill them if they don't do anything about it, because it just brainstormed you, and you set up probably 3 really nasty spells on the top. This team up is really gross. I like it. I also love Hidetsugu's come at me bro pose. He does not give a single care in the world about those Phyrexians trying to get at him. Kogla and Yidaro is a 2 red, green, legendary creature, 7/7, that is an ape dinosaur warrior. King Kong and Godzilla team up. When it enters the battlefield, you choose one. It gains trample and haste until end of turn, or it fights target creature you don't control. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, but Lucy, what if I don't have 6 mana? Well, I have just the thing for you, because Kogla and Yidaro, you can pay 2 red and green and discard them to destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment, and then shuffle it into your library and then draw a card. So you destroy. I really love the flexibility that Kogla and Yidaro offers, but because of that flexibility, they probably won't make a good commander. You kind of really want that extra discard effect, and you can't discard from the command zone, unfortunately. Here we have Quintorius Loremaster, the elephant who may or may not have a spark. For 3 red and a white, you get a 3/5 with vigilance that at the beginning of your end step, exile target non-creature, non-land card from your graveyard. Create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. For 1 red and white, you can tap and sacrifice one of those spirits to choose target card exiled with him. You may cast that card this turn without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into a graveyard, put on the bottom of its owner's library instead. So instead of exiling it, you get the things over and over again, and you can cast some insane artifacts like that, or enchantments, or sorceries. Quintorius has you covered no matter what. He can kind of be a sort of spirit tribal commander in red and white, or some kind of value, tokeny, Seki shenanigans. But this is all for talking about commander. I don't think Quintorius is good enough to break into older formats. Glissa, Herald of Predation. For 3 black and a green, you get a 3/5 that, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can either incubate 2 twice, which makes 2 artifacts, transform all incubator tokens you control, Or, Phyrexians you control gain first strike and death touch until end of turn. Did you want an incubator, Commander? You get Glissa. I guess that makes her a mommy? Is that how that works? I'm not sure that's how that works. People in the comments, tell me if that's how that works. I don't want to call Glissa a mommy. She scares me. Drana and Linvala is 1 white and a black for a 3/4 that gets flying and vigilance. And activated abilities of creatures your opponents control can't be activated. And Drana and Linvala has all activated abilities of all creatures your opponents control, and you can spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate those abilities. This card's just really good because it has flying and vigilance, is a 3/4, and that's kind of all you need, but it then just has all of these extra good words attached to it. Keep in mind, this also includes mana abilities, so your opponent, say they have something that taps for 3 mana. Now, Drana and Linvala also tap for 3 mana. Let's say they also have something that, I don't know, untaps itself. Maybe Drana and Linvala accidentally goes infinite. Who knows? Or you just give Linvala something that untaps it, and then you go infinite that way. Interesting strategies for white and black, honestly. Galta and Mavrin is 3 green, white for a 12/12 dinosaur vampire with trample. Then whenever you attack, you choose one. You either create a tapped and attacking XX green dinosaur creature token with trample, where X is the greatest power among other attacking creatures. Then you can create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is the number of other attacking creatures. Yeah, that's kind of problem with Galta and Mavrin, is they kind of don't work on their own. You need something else to go with them. However, sometimes all you need is a 12/12 with trample. Baral and Karizev is 1 blue and a red for a 2/4 legendary creature human. They're both human with first strike and menace. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, you may cast a spell with lesser mana value that shares a card type with it from your hand without paying its mana cost. If you don't, create First Make Ragavan, a legendary 2/1 red monkey pirate creature token. Gains haste until end of turn. For one, I thought Karizev was a pirate. I'm pretty sure she is a pirate. I'm unsure. But Ragavan definitely is a pirate. So, don't know there. This card just has a lot of value, though. Because, let's say you cast just, 3 mana instant sorcery. Let's be conservative. Then, you can either cast something for 2 or 1 without paying its mana cost, which is just kind of value, or you make it 2/1 for free. And keep in mind, Ragavan doesn't go away. He sticks around, unlike the token from original Karizev. So, this Ragavan's just as annoying as his Modern Horizons one, though this one won't see as much play. Yargle and Multani. 3 black, and a green for an 18/6. This card is so big. They're so big. They're so huge. I love them so much. It doesn't do anything besides it's an 18/6. But it's also an 18/6. That's sometimes you just need an 18/6. I want to fling this at people and make them sad. I want to play this in Modern somehow. And when they try to remove it, I'm just like, okay, fling it at your face, person who has probably fetched and shocked in something, and they're just dead? Is that a pipe dream? Yes, absolutely it's a pipe dream. Do I want to do it in Pioneer maybe, where it's a bit less of a pipe dream? Absolutely. This card just seems really... Is it a meme? Yes. Am I going to first pick it every time and lose because of it? Also, yes, probably. Wrinkle and Torbrand is 1 black, red for a 3/4 fairy dwarf with flying, first strike, and haste. Those are all very good keywords. And whenever they deal combat damage to a player or a battle, very important, each player sacrifices a creature treasure token or each player sacrifices a creature, or if a source would deal damage to a player or battle this turn, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. Plus 2 is a lot, and an important note about this one. It has first strike, so it's going to do that anyway. So say you attack a battle with, let's say, 3 creatures that aren't quite enough to kill it, and you attack your opponent with Rankle and Torbrand. First strike damage happens. Rankle and Torbrand make your other creatures deal plus 2 damage. And then probably can just kill that battle, or kill your opponent. Who really knows? This card's very good. I really like it. 5 mana for a 3/4 flying first strike haste on its own would probably be good enough, and because it's 2023, we have all of these extra words too. Errant and Quijada. For 1 blue and a white, we get a 2/3 human angel with flash and flying. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast spells with flash or flying from the top of your library. This is probably the best angel commander that I can think of off the top of my head. Because 1, you can just, cast those cards from your library. And most angels have flying. In addition, you get to do things with flash. There's not a whole lot of cards that you'd play with flash that are in angels. But some angels have flash. And those have flying. Coincidence? I think not. Itali, Primal Conqueror. My queen, they got to you. For 5 red, you get a 7/7 Elder Dinosaur with Trample. And when it enters the battlefield, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. You may cast any number of spells from among the non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. That alone is huge and big. Being able to cast any spell off of just entering the battlefield? That's kind of gross. Old Itali had to attack. This one does not. Oh, also, by the way, if you pay 10 mana, 9 and a Phyrexian green, it flips over into an 11/11 with Trample, Indestructible, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, they get that many poison counters. That's just big and huge. Like, this is unbelievably big. There's so many big creatures in this format. This card definitely makes it so that the exile cards that we've gotten are a lot better. Indestructible makes this card gross. It's a Blightsteel Colossus that is also a dinosaur. Itali, I'm so sorry. They got to you. I was too late. Anyway, here's this jerkwad. Here's Heliod the Radiant Dawn. For 2 white, you get a 4/4. And when it enters the battlefield, you return target enchantment card that isn't a god from your graveyard to your hand. That's all he does, until you pay 3 and a Phyrexian blue to flip him over into Heliod the Warped Eclipse. You may cast spells as though they had flash. Yes, all of them. And spells you cast cost 1 generic less for each card your opponents have drawn this turn. Do I think this card is probably one of the most interesting commanders we've seen so far? And do I want to build around him? Yes. Was he a jerkwad and he owed me a sandwich before he got wrecked by Kaya? Yes. I am still mad about that. Polukranos Reborn is a green for a 4/5 with reach. That's it. Then that's probably going to be good on its own. Like, ignoring the Engine of Ruin half of it, just triple green for a extra, like, there's already a really solid mono green devotion deck, and it's getting a lot of powerful tools in this format. I mean, in this set. This Polukranos can be really good, especially because you can get to that 6 and a Phyrexian white very easily. You just pay the 2 life in mono green. And it flips over into Polukranos Engine of Ruin. That is a 6/6 with reach and lifelink, and every other non-token Hydra you control becomes a Wormcoil engine. Those Wormcoil engine, for those of you know, it basically splits off into 2 3/3s, one with reach and one with lifelink. It's not as good as Death Touch and lifelink that Wormcoil engine was, but this card's really, really freaking good. Like, if this doesn't see play in mono green in Pioneer, I would be surprised. It's got too many words not to see play. This is a last-minute addition. The Commander's Rules Committee showed me this little thing. Well, they gave me permission to share it with you. Ayara, Widow of the Realm, is 1 black for a 3/3 legendary creature elf noble. You can tap to sacrifice another creature or artifact. Ayara, Widow of the Realm, deals X damage to target opponent or battle, and you gain X life, where X is the sacrifice permanent's mana value. For 5 and a Phyrexian red, you can transform her into Ayara, Furnace Queen. At the beginning of combat on your turn, return up to 1 target artifact or creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next instep, and it's a 4/4. Ayara is really cool. She's a cool reanimation thing. Being able to deal X damage to opponents and gaining X life is really powerful, and also turning around and fueling itself on the backside is very good. It's going to be interesting to see these flipping these flipping legendaries, to see if they're good enough on their own on the front halves, or if you need to get to the transform. Because some of their transforms are very expensive, and that makes it a little bit awkward to play them. Next we have Realm Breaker, the Invasion Tree. For 3 generic mana, you get a legendary artifact. For 2 generic and tap, target opponent mills 3 cards. Put a land card from their graveyard onto the battlefield tapped under your control. It gains, if this land would leave the battlefield, exile instead of putting it anywhere else. Keep in mind, that says just a land card. It doesn't need to be from the ones that you milled. You just get a land card from them. And then for 10 whole mana, you can tap and sacrifice Realm Breaker, the Invasion Tree, to search your library for any number of Praetor cards, put them onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. Ebon Praetor, here we come. But more realistically, this is for Praetor Tribal. And considering we're getting 5 new Praetors this set, we might be able to see a commander deck with it. It's a little bit awkward, but I think this might be fun. But you're mostly playing Realm Breaker for the ability to ramp based off of your opponent's lands in the graveyard. Like, if your opponent fetches, you can go snipe their fetch land. Hopefully it fetches for what you need, or it's an Evolving Wilds or something like that. Now we're in the rare battles, and this is where things get very spicy. This is the Invasion of Fiora, which is 4 black for a 4 health battle, that when it enters the battlefield, you can either destroy all legendaries or destroy all non-legendary creatures. And once you deal 4 damage to it, you get Marchesa, Resolute Monarch, which is a 3/6 with Menace and Death Touch. Whenever it attacks, you remove all counters from up to 1 target permanent. That can be other battles. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you haven't been dealt combat damage since your last turn, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. So you kind of become the Monarch, sorta, not really. This card's really insane. There's a mono black deck. Well, there's a mono black deck in my heart in Pioneer, but there's a red black deck that this Sheldred can attack into this and kill it immediately, and that means you get Marchesa. And also, you can destroy all non-legendary creatures, which, coincidence, Sheldred is it is legendary, so it's non-legendary, and you can clear the way for this. I think this card is better than people may be giving it credit for. It's kind of expensive, but that expense is worth it, in my opinion. Invasion of Ixalan. I haven't been given permission to tell you what's on the back of this one yet, but it's 1 and a green for 4 health battle. That when it enters the battlefield, you look at the top 5 cards of your library, and you may reveal a permanent card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. That alone is probably fine and lets it see play, because it's just a decent filtery card that lets you get... I like how this set has used permanent a lot more. Lets you get basically anything that's a permanent nowadays. I really wish we knew what the back half was, but we don't yet. At time of recording, they may allow me to spoil. Look, I'm gonna drop the act a little bit. I'm catching these as soon as you guys are, so I want to know what's on the back too. We know it's a 4/3 because we see the numbers above the health. That's something. A 4/3 for dealing 4 damage. That's probably cool, right? Right? Anyway, Invasion of Ikoria is X green green for a 6 health battle that when it enters the battlefield, search your library and or graveyard for a non-human creature card with mana value X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shovel. This card is insane. This is probably one of the sickest cards I've seen because it's a tutor and commander. It can probably make its own deck in Pioneer. Probably not Modern, little bit too slow for Modern. But being able to tutor out a creature might be very relevant. Non-human is sort of relevant, but that's kind of Ikoria's whole thing. And once you deal 6 damage to this, it flips over into Zilortha, Apex of Ikoria. It is an 8/8 dinosaur with reach, and for each non-human creature you control, you may have that creature assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. That is super mega trample, and this will just kill people. The line I'm currently thinking about in Pioneer is you play something, Gingerbread on 1, and then you play this for 0, and you get an Ornithopter, and you attack the battle with the Gingerbread, and then you play in Soul Artifact on the Ornithopter, swing in, kill the battle, flip over Zilortha, and you have a 5/5 flyer, an 8/8 with reach that basically can just deal damage as though it weren't blocked, and you have a Gingerbread kicking around. Pretty good start, if I do say so myself. This could also probably just be see play in probably in like Hammer Time decks in Pioneer. Like it can move the Hammer Time deck over into Pioneer. You can search 4 mana. You can get Kimba, and she can pick up one of the hammers, and that makes Zilortha. It's probably not that relevant, but being able to tutor out one of your key pieces is very nice. Next we have Invasion of Segovia. I actually haven't been here before, so maybe I'll take a look into it after this whole fiasco dies down. For 2 and a blue, you get a 4 health battle that when it enters the battlefield, you create 2 1/1 blue Kraken creature tokens with trample. Having blue creature tokens with trample is kind of weird. And when you flip this battle over, non-creature spells you cast have Convoke, so that solidifies blue being able to do Convoke-y shenanigans in this set. And at the beginning of your instep, untap up to 4 target creatures. That just screams Convoke shenanigans to me. Like, this just seems very good. Like, 3 mana for 2 tokens? Pretty standard rate. You'd probably play that front half of it. And if you can ever flip this over, that's just value right there. Invasion of Tolvada. For 3 white and a black, you get a 5 health saga. No. Invasion of Tolvada. For 3 white and a black, you get a 5 health battle that when it enters the battlefield, return target non-battle permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, you get a cute little reanimation thing on here, and if you can kill it, you get the Broken Sky. Creature tokens you control get +1/+0 and have lifelink. But what if I don't have any creature tokens? Well, that's what the second ability does. At the beginning of your instep, create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. I'm honestly not as high on this battle as I am on some of the other ones. Mostly because 5 health is a lot for a not super stellar payoff to it. I do still think this card's probably... You probably still pick this in Limited. I just don't see this one breaking out anywhere else. Ooh, we're moving on into the Mythics, and we have my girl. She's back. Archangel Elspeth is a 2 white for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker Elspeth. A +1, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. For a -2, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. It becomes an angel in addition to its other types and gains flying. Something I think people are kind of glazing over with this -2 ability is that these are permanent buffs that these get. These don't go away. Even if you kill Elspeth, they don't go away. It just gains flying. And For -6, you return all non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. I think this card is very solid. Probably won't see play in Modern because 4 mana is a lot and they have some slightly buffer. Like, you have Sarah that can make 4/4 angels in that, and that's a little bit better. But I think this card could show up in Pioneer because being able to protect itself and turn basically anything into a threat seems kind of insane. She's not super splashy, and I wish she was kind of fancier because, you know, she kind of kicked a whole lot of butt in the story, but we take just solid planeswalkers. She's okay. And I think just being okay can be really powerful sometimes. Next we have a solid reprint, 2 and white for a 2/2 monk in Monastery Mentor. It has prowess, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 white monk creature token with the prowess. That includes battles, that includes enchantments, that includes artifacts, instants, and sorceries. This card's just really solid, and I'm glad they found a way to reprint it. But Borgarigamos and Bibblethip. 2 green, blue, and a red for a 6/5 Cyclops Homunculus that when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. Then you may discard any number of land cards. When you discard one or more land cards this way, Borgarigamos and Bibblethip deals twice that much damage to target creature, and by the way, this also happens on attacks. So let's break that down. First off, when it does, anytime this enters the battlefield or attacks, you get to draw a card. That's it, you don't have to do anything else. Then you may discard any number of land cards. So let's say you discard 2. Those just 2 cards are coming up your hand. When you discard those 2, it deals 4 damage to target creature. I don't think this card is bad. I don't think these 2 are bad. It's just a little awkward to deal with when especially like the other ability is just putting it third from the top for 1 and a blue. It dodges removal, but I don't think that's good enough. Like, I think he's just like, I think these 2 are just 5 mana for a 6/5 that attacks, draws you a card. Which is fine on its own. There's just more. There's some fancier Tamer commanders, honestly. Omnath, Locust of All. They got him. The Phyrexians got him. For white, blue, Phyrexian black, red, green, you get a 4/4 Phyrexian elemental that if you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes black instead. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card if it has 3 or more colored mana symbols in its mana cost. If you do, add 3 mana in any combination of its colors and put it into your hand. If you don't reveal it, put it into your hand. So, here's the thing. Worst case scenario, he's 5 mana, 4/4, draws you a card at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase. That's the worst bit. The best part, like, the most value is that he just keeps generating mana value after mana value. Keep in mind, it's 3 or more colored mana symbols. That doesn't need to be 3 colors. It's just, you could have a red card or a black card, for instance. And those are fine. It's just 3, it's not 3 differently colored mana symbols. It's 3 colored mana symbols. I think Omnath is going to be pretty solid. I don't know if he'll break out into other constructed formats other than Commander, because 5 mana is getting on the verge of a lot, and other formats don't really care about the unspent mana bit as much as the other formats, like Commander, might want to. I do think this card's very good. You definitely first pick it unlimited, no matter what. This card's good. Might be a little hard to cast, but we have the tap lands. We have treasures. Like, you'll be able to cast it. Don't worry. Oh, also this is a rare. I put in the mythics. I thought it was a mythic. Thalia and the Gitrog monster is 1 white, black, and green for a 4/4 with first strike and death touch. Lets you play an additional land on each of your turns. Creatures and non-basic lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped, and whenever they attack, you sacrifice a creature or land and then draw a card. Like, Look, this card has so many words on it. It's 2023. Like, do all of these synergize with each other? No. Is this a really flavorful way of combining Thalia and the Gitrog monster's abilities? Yes, I love it so much. And it's also kind of funny because of the whole, the Gitrog monster ate Thalia rumor that was going around. Good thing to show that, it's definitely not. And good thing to know that they got along, or at the very least, are working together at the moment. Zergo and Ojitai. For 2 blue, red, and white, you get a 4/4 orc dragon with flying and haste, and they have hexproof as long as it entered the battlefield this turn. So at the minimum, you're attacking in with 4/4 flying haste. Your opponent is not saying anything about it if their way of saying anything about it is targeting these two. And they also have, whenever one or more dragons you control deal combat damage to a player or battle, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the rest at the bottom of your library in any order. You may return one of those dragons to its owner's hand. You don't even have to. Keep in mind, this is one or more dragons, so you only get the 1 trigger. But, you can just bounce a dragon if it's a value dragon, and you have like something that enters the battlefield, something that triggers off of dragons coming into play, or you might just want to do it for value. Who knows? I'm not your mom. Do whatever you want. Next, we have Sword of Once and Future. The last of the sword cycle, and it's the blue-black one. For 3 generic mana, you get an artifact equipment that says equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from blue and from black, which is pretty good. A lot of removal spells are black, so this stops a lot of removal spells. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you surveil 2. A friendly reminder, Surveil 2 means you look at the top 2 cards of your library, and you can put either one of those into the graveyard and the rest on the back on top. Then, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. And equips for 2. This card is amazing. It's the sword, it's the last of the sword cycle. It's the last time we're probably going to be dealing with Mirrodin for a while, so it was probably the last time we get the chance to look at it. And the effect is really good. Being able to filter through the top of your deck and then use that top of your deck in order to cast cool spells, it's very good. I'd be surprised if this doesn't see play in, at the very least, Pioneer. If it doesn't see play in Pioneer, I would be surprised. But it's going to be definitely coming to a Commander table sometime. Coming to a Commander table near you. Sword of Once and Future. I wished for a time, well, not wished, I thought for a time that this was kind of inspired by Eldraine, because Once and Future is not only a card in Eldraine, but it's also a reference to King Arthur, and one of the biggest books on King Arthur mythology. But sadly, I was informed that most of these swords have all come from Mirrodin, so it's probably not made from Eldraine. Still, a girl can dream. Next we have Invasion of Ravnica. It is a 5-mana colorless battle with 4 health. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls that isn't exactly 2 colors. So, colorless, 1 color, 3 color, 4 color, 5 color, all of those can be killed by Invasion of Ravnica. If you are not from Ravnica, which means obviously you're exactly 2 colors, be gone. There is no place for you. They literally just fixed that guild. Where the Phyrexians are invading from, they just fixed it, and they're not happy about it. Neither is the Guild Pact Paragon, which is a 5/5 that you get after killing this battle. Whenever you cast a spell that's exactly 2 colors, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a card that's also exactly 2 colors from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I think this card will see play. I don't know exactly where. May only see play in control decks. Because, a 5/5, a lot of them are 2 colors, so they get more value there. But I do know this is definitely seeing play in Commander. Like, I can't think of a single deck in Commander that wouldn't want this. Like, worst case scenario, it's a removal spell that turns into a 5/5. Best case scenario, it is a, 5/5 that is consistently drawing you more cards. Which is very good. I like it. Next we have Invasion of Tarkir. For 1 and a red, you get a 5 health battle that when it enters the battlefield, you reveal any number of dragon cards from your hand. When you deals X damage plus 2 to any other target. That can be players, that can be battles, that can be anything. And X is obviously the number of cards that are revealed this way. And once you flip it over, it becomes a 4/4 flying trample that whenever a dragon you control attacks, it deals 2 damage to any target. Worst case scenario, this is 1 and a red for deal 2 damage. That's fine. And then you can flip it over into something insane later. I think this card will definitely see play. Like, will it see play in burn decks? Probably not. You probably want to be a slightly more big, mid-rangey red deck to do it, but 2 mana for a 4/4 flying and trample that at worst, whenever it attacks, it deals 2 damage to any target. And if you happen to have other dragons or other copies of this, it's not legendary. This card's very good. I would play this card. And it goes without saying, Snap, first pick it in limited. Do not let any other player look at it. If you see this, you pick it, no questions asked. If you aren't playing red, if you're playing 4 color, not red, you splash for red because this card is that good. Invasion of Chandalar. For 3 green, you get a 4 health battle that whenever it enters the battlefield, you return up to 3 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. That's huge. That is battles, that is artifacts, that is enchantments. This card's kind of insane. I love this card. And once you do destroy it, it flips over into Leyline Surge. It's an enchantment that at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. This is huge. You get to cheat out so many things. I love this card. It's probably just a commander card, but it's one really good commander card. Next we have Invasion of New Phyrexia. That's right, they're getting a taste of their own medicine. For X blue and a white, you get a 6 health battle that whenever it enters the battlefield, you create X 2/2 white and blue knight creature tokens with vigilance. Sounds pretty good. And once you deal that 6 damage, it flips over into Teferi Akosa of Zalfir. For a 4 mana planeswalker that +1s to draw 2 cards, then you discard 2 cards unless you discard a creature card. Might be a little bit difficult. Blue and white decks typically don't run that many creatures, but considering you might be playing more knights, who knows? Because he also has a -2 that you get an emblem with knights you control, get +1/+0, and have ward 1. Then he has a -3, tap X creatures you control. When you do, shuffle target non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value X or less into its owner's library. Not X from the top. That thing is just shuffled in. Was it indestructible? Doesn't matter. It's getting shuffled in. I really like Teferi. Some people are talking about how he can't protect himself, and that's not super good. But keep in mind, on the front half of this, you're making a bunch of knights. If you're paying, let's say, 4 mana for this, you're making 2/2/2 knights. And then he can make an emblem to protect the knights. Pretty good, in my opinion. A little bit expensive, though. I don't see him seeing play in, like, Modern or anything like that. But still, this will be insane in, specifically Commander. There's a Esper Knights deck that's roaming around with the spicy Eminence Commander that got spoiled. I think this will slot right into there. And that'll be it. That's all I've got for you today. So, thank you so very much. I will try to keep track of what I've already shown you and meet you back here next week with whatever I can show you next. And until next time, au revoir.